Beneath the quiet hills of Cappadocia, there is a city that was not built toward the sky, but carved downward into darkness. Derinkuyu was not a cave for hiding a few people. It was a buried city, large enough to shelter communities, animals, food, water, and faith. Here, deep below the surface, people could sleep, store grain, protect livestock, pray, and wait for danger to pass overhead. The mystery is not only how they carved so deep. It is what kind of world made disappearing underground feel safer than breathing in the open air. Cappadocia made this possible. Its soft volcanic rock could be cut by human hands, yet remained strong enough to hold a hidden world. Above ground, the landscape looks almost dreamlike. Below ground, that same stone becomes something far more serious, a fortress without walls. Instead of towers, Derinkuyu had tunnels. Instead of city gates, it had stone doors that could seal danger outside. Each passage was narrow for a reason. Anyone entering without knowing the city would lose speed, space, and certainty. The deeper the city went, the more the surface disappeared, until survival depended on air shafts, wells, storage, and memory. Derinkuyu was not simply hidden underground. It was designed to keep life moving when the outside world became too dangerous to trust. To understand Derinkuyu, imagine a city where streets became corridors, walls became earth, and the sky was replaced by stone. Rooms were carved for sleeping, storing grain, pressing oil, keeping animals, and gathering quietly while danger moved somewhere above. Even animals could be brought below because a refuge that saved people but lost food, livestock, and tools would not survive for long. This was not panic carved into stone. It was planning, careful, layered, and brutally practical. Over centuries, these underground spaces were expanded and adapted, shaped by conflict, migration, faith, and the need to survive unseen. Cappadocia sat along routes where empires, armies, merchants, and refugees moved across Anatolia. The land was beautiful, but never truly isolated. When danger approached, survival did not always mean building higher walls. Sometimes it meant vanishing before the enemy arrived. Entrances could be hidden inside homes, courtyards, stables, or ordinary rooms, places an outsider might pass without noticing. Once sealed from within, the city could become invisible, not because it was small, but because the surface gave almost nothing away. Derinkuyu's genius was not only depth, it was deception, the ability to hide thousands beneath a landscape that seemed empty. Inside Derinkuyu, defense was built into the smallest details. Even the shape of a doorway could decide who reached the next chamber alive. The famous rolling stone doors were not decorative. They were heavy barriers designed to trap danger on the wrong side of the dark. From inside, these doors could be moved into place. From outside, an intruder faced stone, darkness, and uncertainty. Ventilation shafts carried air down through the levels, turning a buried refuge into a place where people could actually survive. Without air, Derinkuyu would have been a tomb. With air, it became a city that could disappear and breathe. Water was just as critical. Deep wells allowed the city to endure when the surface was unsafe, watched, or controlled by enemies. Food storage was not an afterthought. Grain, oil, wine, and dry goods could mean the difference between shelter and slow collapse. The underground city had to solve every problem a surface village faced, but with no sunlight, no open fields, and no easy escape. This is what makes Derinkuyu so astonishing. It was not simply a hiding place. It was a survival machine carved into the earth. But no one builds a survival machine without a reason. And Derinkuyu's reason was written in centuries of fear above ground. Cappadocia was never an empty backdrop. It stood along routes where empires, armies, merchants, raiders, and refugees crossed Anatolia. For the people who lived here, danger did not always arrive once. Sometimes it returned again and again, carried by every new century. In an exposed landscape, a fortress could be seen. A village could be found. but a city beneath the ground could disappear. That was Derinkuyu's advantage. It did not challenge danger in the open. It removed the people from sight. The deeper they went, the more the surface became a memory, a place of risk, distance, and sound carried through stone. In that darkness, architecture became psychology. Narrow tunnels slowed fear. Heavy doors gave silence a shape. A sealed passage could turn a corridor into a trap for outsiders, and a lifeline for those who knew the city's hidden routes. But survival underground demanded discipline. Light, air, water, and food had to be managed with precision. Too much smoke, too little air, a contaminated well, or a blocked passage could turn shelter into danger. Derinkuyu was safe only because it was organized. The underground city worked because every chamber served a purpose. At the heart of that system were the people who understood it: families, workers, religious communities, and guards moving through darkness by memory. A newcomer could get lost in minutes. But for those who lived here, the tunnels became a second landscape. The city's design turned knowledge into protection. To survive, you had to know which door to close, which shaft to follow, and which corridor to avoid. Some spaces were practical. Others were sacred, because even underground, people needed more than protection. They needed meaning. Prayer chambers turned fear into ritual. In the dark, faith gave order to waiting. Above them, footsteps might pass without knowing an entire world was holding its breath below. This silence was not emptiness. It was strategy, the sound of a city refusing to be found. And still, life continued. Bread was divided, water was drawn, lamps were tended, and stories were whispered into stone. Derinkuyu was a refuge, but it was also a test of patience. No sunrise reached its deepest rooms. To remain below was to measure time differently, not by the sun, but by breath, flame, hunger, and the hope that danger would pass. The longer people stayed underground, the more Derinkuyu became something beyond shelter. It became a hidden way of life. Its chambers were not random holes in the earth. They were arranged around movement, defense, storage, air, and survival. A person could move from sleeping rooms to storage areas, from stables to chapels, from narrow passages to deeper levels without ever seeing the sky. That is what makes Derinkuyu unsettling. It does not feel like people briefly hid here. It feels like they prepared to outlast the world above. Some estimates suggest Derinkuyu could shelter thousands. But numbers alone cannot explain the experience of vanishing below the earth. Imagine the sound: footsteps on stone, animals shifting in the dark, whispers traveling through corridors, and silence pressing from every wall. Every ordinary act became deliberate. Lighting a lamp, opening a passage, drawing water, or rolling a stone door could affect everyone nearby. Above ground, history moved in the open. Below ground, Derinkuyu turned survival into a quiet discipline. That discipline is visible in the city's design. Nothing feels accidental, and almost nothing feels comfortable. Derinkuyu was not designed for comfort. It was designed for the one thing people needed most when the surface failed them: time. Time was the real weapon. If danger lasted hours, Derinkuyu could wait. If it lasted days, the city could endure. But endurance had a price. The deeper the refuge became, the more the human body had to adapt to darkness, pressure, and silence. The city protected life, but it also compressed it into corridors, chambers, rules, and routines carved from stone. This is why Derinkuyu feels less like a ruin and more like a question. How much of the world would people abandon to survive? They gave up sunlight, open roads, wide fields, and the comfort of being seen, because being unseen could mean staying alive. In that choice, Derinkuyu reveals something ancient and universal. When danger comes from above, humanity learns to build below. The city was not created by fear alone. It was created by memory, by generations who knew that peace could vanish without warning. Every tunnel carried that memory. Every sealed door, every hidden entrance, every breath of air from the shafts was part of a survival language. And that is why Derinkuyu still unsettles us. It is not only the depth, It is the realization that an entire way of life was built to disappear. The question is not simply why Derinkuyu was built deep underground. It is what people feared so deeply that the safest place left was beneath their own world. Above ground, the landscape could return to silence. Fields reopened, roads cleared, but below, the memory of danger remained carved into every wall. Over centuries, Derinkuyu was used, expanded, forgotten, rediscovered, and finally revealed as one of the most astonishing underground cities ever found. Its corridors do not give easy answers. They lead from one chamber to another, from one question to the next. Who carved the earliest rooms? How many generations reshaped them? How many times did families descend before the surface felt safe again? Some answers may be lost, but the design still speaks. This was a city built not for glory, but for survival. Derinkuyu did not announce power with towers, palaces, or walls. Its power was silence, depth, and the ability to vanish. That is what makes it different from many ancient cities. Most were built to be seen. Derinkuyu was built to disappear. And yet, by disappearing, it survived, carrying the fear, intelligence, and endurance of the people who carved it. Every carved wall is a record of pressure. Every tunnel is a decision. Every hidden room is proof that survival can reshape the earth itself. So when we ask why Derinkuyu was built deep underground, the answer is not only fear. It is memory, strategy, faith, and the ancient human will to keep living when the world above becomes unsafe. But Derinkuyu's story does not end with survival. It continues in the silence left behind when the people return to the surface. Long after danger passed, the tunnels remained, patient, dark, and waiting beneath ordinary ground. To walk through Derinkuyu today is to enter a place where survival still feels physical, close enough to touch in the walls. The ceilings press low, the corridors narrow. The darkness makes every turn feel deliberate. Nothing here was built to impress the eye. It was built to answer a harsher question. How do you survive when the surface can no longer protect you? The answer was not elegance. It was depth, concealment, discipline, and a city that could close itself from the inside. That is why Derinkuyu feels almost modern in its logic. It understood what threatened societies still understand. Protection is not always visible. Sometimes the strongest walls are not walls at all. They are distance, darkness, and the impossibility of knowing where life has gone. Derinkuyu turned absence into protection. The city survived by becoming unseen. And in that invisibility, Derinkuyu preserved one of the most extraordinary answers humanity ever gave to fear. What remains today is not a city in the usual sense. It is a shadow of decisions made under pressure. Every carved surface suggests labor. Every corridor suggests urgency. Every sealed doorway suggests someone once needed time to survive. The people of Derinkuyu did not leave behind monuments of conquest. They left behind architecture of endurance. There is no grand palace underground, no ceremonial avenue, no skyline, only the quiet intelligence of people who understood danger. And perhaps that is why it feels so powerful. Derinkuyu was built for the moments history rarely records. Waiting, hiding, breathing, enduring. Its deepest mystery is not technological. It is human. The willingness to reshape the earth when the surface no longer feels safe. The city below Cappadocia reminds us that civilization is not always visible. Sometimes it survives in the dark. Derinkuyu is not only a place beneath the ground. It is proof that fear can build, memory can plan, and survival can become architecture. It was not built to dominate the landscape. It was built to disappear beneath it, and that is what allowed it to last. And that is why Derinkuyu was built deep underground, not simply to escape danger, but to preserve life when the world above could no longer be trusted.